A behavior contract is a written document between an instructor and student which specifies expected behaviors, positive and negative consequences, and time frame of the contract with review dates. The contract is then signed by the instructor, student, and others who participate in the contract. Contracts are commonly used to improve academic motivation and performance. For example, this instructor is negotiating a contract to encourage David to increase his math scores. If David is successful, he'll earn rewards that he helped select.
Nice job, David. Good job.
Contracts are also used to improve various problematic behaviors, such as classroom and social behavior, substance abuse, and school attendance. For instance, Mr. Williams is negotiating with Irving to ride the school bus so that he will arrive to class on time. When Irving successfully rides the bus 3 times and arrives to class before the bell rings, he can choose from a list or menu of rewards that he and Mr. Williams negotiated. Contracts can be a practical and creative way for instructors to help students of all ages resolve troublesome behaviors. The first step in behavior contracts is make a...
Excuse me. Did you say contracts?
Well, yes.
Perhaps my organization can be of assistance. You see, the putting out of contracts is my business. Capiche? Here is a personal copy of my bestseller. Hey, you forget you saw that. You know what to do, right? Ciao.
The first step in behavior contracts is make preparations. Begin by defining the behavior you want to change. The behavior must be observable and measurable. In other words, student behavior that you can see and measure. For example, Todd should show more respect is too vague. Instead, Todd will raise his hand and wait to be called on before responding is a behavior that you can see and measure. Likewise, Lucia will try harder to do her math is better stated, Lucia will do 30 math problems each day. But when selecting the behavior, it may be necessary to break it into smaller steps to increase student success rate. So instead of contracting for 30 problems, perhaps begin with 10 problems the first week, then 20 the second week, and finally 30 the third week.
Next, my favorite part, selecting reinforcers.
During negotiations, the student should identify several rewards that he would like to earn. However, it's best to be prepared with a menu of items that you think the student might like and that you would be willing to offer. The basic rule in choosing reinforcers is that they should be inexpensive and require little time. Too often, instructors feel they must purchase something unique and fail to consider the most powerful reinforcers in their own classroom. Rewards such as being first in line, skipping an assignment, sitting next to a friend, being the teacher's assistant, wearing a hat in class, or parking in a reserved space. More extravagant rewards like gift certificates, posters, tickets.
What about pizza?
Yes, that too can be donated by businesses or individuals outside of your school. If so, use these sparingly or as an additional incentives.
Now define the criterion.
This is a description of what the student must do in exchange for a reward. There are two basic types, consecutive and cumulative. A consecutive criterion requires a student to perform the behavior a certain number of times in a row, or consecutively, before awarding the reinforcer. For example, Roberta will receive a reward if she earns a C or better on her biology assignments for the next 5 days. Suppose Roberta performs well the first 4 days, but gets a D on the 5th day's assignment. In this case, she fails to receive the reward regardless of successfully completing 4 previous assignments. Instead, a cumulative criterion adds up each success but does not count the failures. Let's try it again using a cumulative criterion. This time, Roberta will receive a reward when she earns 5 C's or better on her biology assignments. It allows Roberta some leeway if she fails to meet the daily criterion. This cumulative criterion is better because, after all, no one is perfecto.
Finally, you may want to include bonus and penalty clauses if the student is not motivated.
The primary purpose of a bonus is to encourage the student to meet a criterion in the least amount of time. For instance, Alex's contract states that if he has less than 4 talkouts during a period, he'll receive a reward. In addition, if he has no talkouts during the class period, he'll get a bonus. But suppose Alex can't resist talking to his friends in 4th hour. At this point, a penalty clause might help. A penalty clause such as changing his seat when he exceeds 4 talkouts gives him added incentive when all else fails.
Now that plans are made, you're ready to meet face to face with the student.
Begin by explaining why the contract is necessary.
Tommy, recently you've had trouble keeping your hands to yourself.
School policy states no smoking on school grounds.
Next, lay down the rules for negotiation. Students may negotiate the behavior, the rewards, and the criterion. But one item that is not negotiable is the contract itself. Once the rules have been explained, open negotiations. Share your ideas. Describe the behavior you want to work on with the student. Discuss rewards and criterion. Be sure to ask the student for his input. But watch out. When setting criteria, students often place unrealistically high expectations for themselves. Explain that it's important to start slowly, then gradually increase the requirement. Finally, conclude negotiations and remind the student that the contract is open to renegotiation at any time.
After you make the deal, write it down to avoid, any misunderstandings. Sign it, then post it.
Let's review. There are a myriad of options when it comes to designing an effective contract. You can use them to address academic or behavior problems, with students of all ages. First, make preparations. Begin by defining the behavior you want to change. Remember, it must be observable and measurable. Next, select reinforcers that are motivating to the student, inexpensive, and require little time. Then, define the criterion. Remember, a cumulative criterion reinforces success and is generally better than a consecutive criterion. Finally, select a bonus clause if the student needs a little nudge. And as a last resort, implement a penalty clause. Now that you're prepared, meet and negotiate with the student. Begin by explaining why the contract is necessary. Next, lay down the rules for negotiation. The student may negotiate the behavior, the rewards, and the criterion, but not the need for a contract. Now, open negotiations. Share your ideas. Be sure to ask the student for his input. If necessary, select bonus and penalty clauses. Finally, conclude negotiations and remind the student that the contract is open to renegotiation at any time. Now it's time to write the terms of the contract. Be specific to avoid later misunderstandings. Sign it, then post it to enhance its effectiveness.
Bravo! Bellissimo! Now talk about the interesting ones where the clients become difficult.
If a student refuses to participate, invite a coach, favorite teacher, or parole officer who is important to the student to join in the negotiations. If a student starts out working hard but loses motivation, check that the rewards occur consistently, frequently, and are meaningful to the student. Likewise, if a student starts out excited but becomes frustrated, check the criterion. It may be set too high. Remember, the student must first experience success before he'll have ownership in the contract. Guido, any more words of advice?
Like I always said, if you want to snuff out misbehavior, put out a contract and tell them Guido sent you.